You've likely read reports from the mainstream media about the Nazi rally President Trump held at New York's iconic Madison Square Garden last night. Many of these articles appear to have been written by journalists who wisely avoided the menacing event and reported on it from the safety of their basements. I'm not a real journalist, however, so having read that literally Hitler was gathering some sort of America's worst reprobates in the heart of New York for a rally of hate, I did something very old-fashioned. I went to see it with my own eyes. And what I witnessed at the event was truly shocking. By the time I arrived at midday, people had been standing in line since the early morning. The diversity of Nazis on display was unbelievable. Black Nazis, Latino Nazis, Asian Nazis, white Nazis, female Nazis, and lots of Jewish Nazis were all assembled in an orderly line, chatting politely to each other and cracking jokes. It was terrifying. Across the road, kept at bay by the few police who sadly haven't been defunded yet, was a handful of mostly peaceful protesters. They were there to save democracy by demanding that the democratically elected leader of one of America's two major parties be thrown in prison. In contrast with the fascists I found myself among, whose amicable and respectful demeanor was truly outrageous, the peaceful anti-hate protesters were angry and confrontational, screaming in the faces of those of us standing in line. "Enjoy your Nazi rally!" one furious man courageously shouted at a family with young children. Despite these attempts to save democracy from the voters, after several hours of queuing, we eventually made it inside where the horror show truly began. Reminiscent of Adolf Hitler's rallies, the event opened with a stand-up comedian telling a few jokes. Straight out of the Nazi playbook, that was. The hateful comic made fun of everyone: celebrities, Israelis, Palestinians, even Puerto Ricans. It made me want to reach for a comfort animal, but the closest person to me was a woman in a hijab, and I didn't want to commit a hate crime by hugging her without consent. By the time I came to my senses, a radio personality called Sid Rosenberg was on stage. Rosenberg, I thought to myself, typical Nazi name. He had apparently just returned from Israel, which he claimed both he and President Trump support. I couldn't help noticing that every time he mentioned Israel, the Nazi scum, who had by this point filled the stadium to the rafters, cheered and clapped. "This is just like one of Hitler's rallies," I said to a man next to me who was wearing some sort of skull cap. He laughed as if I'd said something funny and resumed cheering, holding up his bigoted Jews for Trump sign. A succession of other prominent speakers followed, all of whom made terrible, offensive comments like, "We love America. America's the greatest country in the world." And ask yourself, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? This obviously made me extremely uncomfortable. Everyone knows America is better off now than it was under Trump because, thanks to DEI, the country finally has a black female vice president. But horrifyingly, the people around me seemed to think that being unable to afford groceries mattered more. I could barely contain my disgust. This was all getting very scary, so I went to hide in a toilet cubicle for several minutes to regain my strength. As expected, the venue didn't have any gender-fluid restrooms, so I had to sit in the men's room listening to Nazi after Nazi wash their hands and make hateful small talk. "Isn't this fun?" I heard one of them say. "Not if you're a person of color," I wanted to screech from the safety of my stall. By the time I eventually returned to my seat, a black man was on stage talking about the need to overcome America's complicated history of racism and sexism to move forward together. "What about transphobia?" I screamed at the top of my lungs. But instead of stopping and checking their privileges, the Nazis kept on rallying. After venting about illegals for what seemed like hours, they eventually wheeled out illegal-in-chief Elon Musk. How stupid are these people? I couldn't help thinking. Can they not see that a student who drops out of college to start a business and a gang member who crosses the southern border to murder Americans are basically the same? But Nazis are gonna Nazi, so they went crazy for Musk, the man who ended democracy by allowing people to express their opinions online without censorship. By the time Trump came on stage, it was nearly 8 p.m. and I was too angry to concentrate on what he was saying. It was deeply hateful, of course, and he was incredibly orange. I stumbled out of the venue in a daze. It was dark, and as we all know, democracy dies in darkness. As you know, I've been concerned about both the economic and political direction of travel of Western countries in recent years. That being the case, I'm keen to protect my family in case things continue to get worse. That's why I'm making sure to keep a portion of my savings in gold. The reason the price of everything continues to go up is that governments keep printing money. When they do, inflation is inevitable. What does inflation mean? It's just a fancy word for the value of your money being diluted over time. This is what's happened to the value of the dollar in our lifetimes. Gold is a great way to preserve the fruits of your hard work, while the value of your dollars, pounds, and euros is continually being eroded. My gold dealer, the Pure Gold Company, works across the world providing excellent service and competitive prices. I recently bought some of these Victoria sovereigns. The good thing about these coins is that unlike many investments, they're exempt from capital gains tax. The Pure Gold Company keep my coins in a vault for me, but they can also deliver them to your home. Go to thepuregoldcompany.co.uk/Konstantin-Kisin to protect your wealth today.